Hey, Sammy, how are you?
Good, man. How are you doing, Shawn?
Oh, fantastic. Zero complaints right now.
That's better than most. That's
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah, tell me about it. So we'll chat for a little bit and wait for the millions of followers and viewers and whatnot to all get into this live stream. We'll break the internet today.
Nice.
Um,
Looking forward.
but yeah, thanks for joining me. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no, my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. Always happy to talk to a fellow, I guess, tenant, member of our community is the way I look at it, actually.
Yeah, yeah, and I actually look forward to getting into that in a bit as well. I was challenged to tell a story, like a short story, to open up each one of these, and
Okay.
so I was really thinking about telling a story about how I got introduced to the Discovery District. As you know, I'm a George Mason University alumni,
Sure.
and just I'm okay with College Park and the University of Maryland, but but I ended up there, and so it's a really neat place that's being built there, and so I'm not going to tell the story how I got there. I'll save it for another time because I'm sure you and I'll get into that today.
Sure.
But today when I thought about you, I was just researching a few things about like giving with no expectation, influence, and stuff like that, and one of the stories, Sammy, that I came across was it was about this softball team. There was a young lady, and she was a senior at a Division II school. It was in Washington State,
Hmm.
and she got up to bat, Sammy, and she's a little short girl, and she hit her first home run, like bam, knocks it out of the park, right? First home run ever. She'd never hit one in like little league, high school, college. In her very last game, regular season game,
Yeah.
she hits a home run. So she rounds first base. She gets to close to second base, and she forgets that she was so excited. Right, two girls in front of her had already come in, so she drove two runs in. She was so excited she forgot to tap first base.
Ooh.
All right. So in her excitement, she shifts around really quickly, right? Dude, she tears her ACL
Ouch.
right there. So she drops to the ground. Everybody's like, this is a pretty amazing story. Everybody's looking around and they're like, what do we do? The coach from the team that, the young lady that hit the homer, she's like looking at the umpire, like, what do we do? What's the rule say? So the rule says that basically if any of her teammates help her around the bases, then her home run gets forfeited, right? It's still a hit,
Hmm.
but in that situation, it would be a two-run single, right?
Hmm.
Instead of a home run. So, what happened, right? And the great part of this particular story is two girls from the opposing team, right? Saw her in agony. You know how the story is going to go.
Right.
Saw her in agony. They run over to her and they ask her, "Do you mind if we, pick you up? We'll take you back to first base, and then we're going to round the bases with you, right?" And so they did that. So they picked the young lady up. They walked her back to first base. They tapped the bag, and they went to second. Tapped the bag, went to third, uh, and they tapped the bag, right? And then
Yeah.
they got her to home plate. So the reason that I'm telling this story, Sammy, is just like it's about character, right? And doing the right thing at the right time, always as much as we possibly can. And
Right.
so I often think of a book, one of my favorite books. It's called The Go Giver, and it's by Bob Berg and John David Mann. And there's five laws of stratospheric success, they call it. And you know, you are one of the characters in the book by
Sure.
far.
Okay.
So you have to read that book.
I will have
But
to read.
but one of the laws that I think of when I think of you, right, is the law of influence, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
what it says is, your influence is determined by, how abundantly you place others' interest first, right? And
Right.
so, Sammy, we're doing that for businesses, right?
Yeah.
You're doing that for communities, especially during these times right now. we have to be more conscious than ever, to be that change. And so I just wanted to open up with that little story, just to bring a glimmer of hope to a few people that are out there, and just to remind ourselves about how important it is to be that influencer and to give with no expectations. And so with that said, Sammy, I'd like for you to introduce yourself, because I would do a terrible job at it. And so can you just tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, actually, let me just say thank you for that story. Very heart-touching, heartwarming. I'm a big baseball fan, and so just hearing of this young woman playing softball and having this moment where she's actually achieving the goal that she's always wanted of hitting a home run, and then in her excitement missing the first base bag, and then of course this dilemma of her teammates bring her around to touch first and then home. I don't know if they win or lose, but at the end of the day, she doesn't get credited with the home run. And the opposing team to have, to their credit, to recognize that moment and to say, look, this is bigger than the game. This moment, this young woman has hit the home run, and we should, give her the opportunity to have that moment. So I thought that was fantastic. And the idea of influence, that does speak to who I am and in terms of the way that I operate, if you want to call it operating, but it's more of my ethos, the way that I think of what I do. And I know you asked me to kind of share more about what I do, but in terms of the introduction, I am the campus connector for the University of Maryland. It is a title actually I came up with my boss, Julie Lenzer, who's the Chief Innovation Officer for the University of Maryland. And the two of us realized that, we work at a very large, prominent, preeminent, world-class, tier 1 research institution. We have 40,000 students, 10,000 faculty and staff, so just a very large place. And there's a lot of great things happening, but in terms of how do you keep on top of it? How do you know if you were somebody from the outside, how to engage individuals on the inside, or if you just wanted to reconnect with an old faculty member or department? The university continues to grow and evolve. Things change, it's hard. And so myself, I should mention I'm a University of Maryland graduate, so proud Terp. I'm happy to have George Mason alum in the Discovery District, as well as many others across the region and the country. We are open and loving to all, except for on basketball and football days, right? So, but we leave that up to the student athletes. And at the end of the day, it's all about collegiality and competition. And so, all of that comes out good for us. But more so in terms of my role, I also have a secondary role, which is the Discovery District Manager, kind of fits within that campus connector, which is really about facilitating greater collaboration across campus. So being a large institution, lots going on, what I try to do is identify those touch points where I see a lot of synergy and say, hey, I think that there's some good that we can do together, whether we go out for research grants, whether there's a partnership that could happen, maybe some external engagement that could lead to some other opportunities. And then, of course, with the Discovery District, what that means for me is how can I ensure that what's happening on the campus can actually be moved into, or at least brought out into the community, right? And so being a public institution, it is really important for us to demonstrate to our taxpayers, to our community members, the value of the university, which is not just what many people think of as workforce development.
Right.
And so I think that that's kind of where my job and my colleagues, who some of them from the Small Business Development Center of Maryland, which is based in the WeWork that you're in, to the colleagues who are over at the Diamondback Garage. We're all about bringing the impact into the community and identifying, where there's some great synergy and great opportunities. But the other part of that for me, which is really exciting, is how can I help build the community? How can I be, in a sense, everyone like you have a small team. How can I be an extension of your team? How can I share the great work that you're doing at Fortis Mortgage? Can I help you find talent? Are there clients that I might know of that are interested in your services? If that helps bring economic development and helps create new economic mobility for you and the businesses and the community around us, it's a win-win-win, right? And for the university to be supportive of that, I think that's one of the things that does get lost. And so that's kind of where I come in. And I should add that since we haven't really connected in person in a while, since I've not been at the WeWork checking in on folks, I actually have a third role that I'm now in charge of, which is called Maverick. So I'm the director of the Mixed Augmented Virtual Reality Innovation Center. Basically a mouthful, but all of that to say I'm working on creating an ecosystem around the extended reality community. So that's anything to do with augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality, which is just this enabling technology that's been out there for the last 30 years. But there really hasn't been enough done to kind of push it over the edge and get more about customer adoption. And so I think with the pandemic and many of the things that are going on from the Black Lives Movement and social justice causes, there is not a better time than for us to look at how we can create use cases of virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality that help us build empathy for each other, that help us share the stories of how we experience the world around us, whether it's neurodiversity or different learning abilities, to communities we've never been exposed to just getting a sense of an immersive experience that is beyond our imagination, thanks to creatives and artists, right? And so,
Hey,
yeah.
Sammy, let me stop you real quick.
Sure, man.
So you're teasing us.
I'm teasing you.
Yeah. Give me an example of virtual reality and how we're going to accomplish what you just mentioned there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
How does that play into my life?
Your life. So there's a couple of different instances, at least two at the university that I can speak of that might be of interest. So if anyone has a family member or friend who is, autism on the spectrum, what we find with individuals who are on the spectrum is that they have different sensitivities. And also in some ways, their ability to socially adapt to the world is different. And so what virtual reality can do is actually, there's two ways you can look about it. It can create an immersive environment where you as the individual who is not on the spectrum, or maybe to that extent of the spectrum, can experience the life that a person who is on the spectrum has on a day-to-day basis. Or the flip side is you could be a person on the spectrum and experience what it could be to be less on the neurodiverse spectrum. But the point being is it helps to build empathy, right? So if you have this immersive headset on and you start walking through, let's say the environment is the University of Maryland campus, and you start realizing that noises to you are much more distracting, much more intense, you start understanding that that is part of their everyday life, situation. You also start thinking about situations where people are close to you in proximity. Some people who are on the autism scale find that being in close proximity to people can actually make them withdraw, right? And so if you start feeling and, in a sense, having that sense about you in this environment, in this immersive experience, in some ways, I believe you gain empathy. And so that is one way for virtual reality to actually be something that helps us to understand situations and life that we're not normally exposed to. Another one that could be of interest to you is we actually have a project with our faculty in computer science and then also in sociology who are working on basically what we call implicit bias. So there have been projects and research done with law enforcement officers, especially locally, about how they would react if they were immersed in an experience where they simply were walking up to a car and all they could see was the person's maybe hand or body profile and how they would respond. So could you imagine if you were a person of color and a police officer came up to you, you don't necessarily know how they're going to respond and they don't know how they're going to respond. You assume that every situation like that is on the same same situational training, but it happens that there are sometimes these microaggressions or this implicit bias where maybe you feel a sense of danger as the law enforcement officer. And so you maybe make certain decisions based on an expectation of a scenario playing out that may not happen simply because of the bias you have of that situation, right? And this virtual reality experience gives you that tool to actually test yourself and to get trained on ensuring that you give every situation the same response, that you are through biometrics, you're able to check heart rate, and if certain things peak, maybe that response is more aggravated or more intense. So, obviously I'm not the scholar here, I'm not the expert, I don't want to speak for my colleagues who are, but I can share that those are two of the instances of virtual reality that have, in my opinion, social good in mind, right? And there are ways that we can make each of us, maybe better, or at least better trained in situations and understanding of other people's situations.
Right, right. And so, Sammy, like around the country, so I can only obviously speak for myself. I remember when we decided to start this company, I'm speaking to my wife about it, and she's like, hey, why don't you go get a space beside a real estate office or a title company or something specifically related to real estate, right?
Yeah,
And so um, I had been doing a little research about development in the College Park area, and then this thing called WeWork popped up there.
right.
And I went there, and it wasn't built yet. They just, kind of showed us the plans of it all and how it was going to look. And I'm like, you know what? I can get a private office in there, um, locking door, all that good stuff, and everything will be fine. I'll be in within compliance and everything. And I was, talking to my wife more about it. And I'm like, you know what? How cool would it be if in the morning I'm at the coffee, pot, and
Mm-hmm.
having a cup of coffee, and someone walks up and we strike a conversation, and then 6 months later, there's this huge problem that we solve, right?
Right.
In regards to technology or whatever it may be, but around our businesses. And that whole innovation and idea of community was very intriguing to me
Mm-hmm.
with that. So two parts. Number one of the questions that I have is around the country, are there any other like higher education or universities that are doing this type of thing, building these communities and bridging the gap between the community and the university and vice versa? I think it's called a land grant.
So land grants are just the types of institutions going back to Abraham Lincoln, actually, and land that was dedicated by the state specifically for higher education.
Mm-hmm.
What you're talking about is more about what we call innovation districts, innovation centers, innovation
Okay.
hubs, or just in general research parks. So it actually happens that in the WeWork, one of your neighbors is actually the president and CEO of the Association of University Research Parks. His name is Brian Darmody.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, he was my predecessor as the manager of the Discovery District. But to your question, yeah, there are definitely at least scores of innovation parks, research hubs, not just in the U.S. but across the world, and it's becoming a much more dedicated or intentional economic development plan. So strategically, communities are looking at their sort of strengths and competitive advantages and saying, look, could we create, maybe with the university or two, or maybe with this industry partner, a research park. And so you can actually look at a couple that are pretty well known. The Research Triangle Park down in North Carolina. Stanford had a research park. Georgia Tech has one that's growing and booming. There's also one at Purdue. And there's dozens more like that across the country. And each of them are utilizing either the university's strengths or the core investments in that state in terms of whatever they're investing for. Is it like biotech? Is it a certain innovation community? But University of Maryland is not necessarily the only one, but it is one of the more prominent ones in our community. BW Tech up the road and UMBC has one, more focused on cybersecurity and some of the other tech stuff. And just because we're talking about it, I should mention that our community and the university are really looking at the areas for us, which in terms of the future is quantum computing, quantum science. There's a lot of great things happening there. We're also invested in aerospace, obviously 3 miles from NASA Goddard. So a lot of stuff happening with NASA, but also just aerospace engineering. We have a UAV company called Airgility in the Discovery District. We're also doing a lot of stuff around cyber, fintech, machine learning, and then we also have a biotech startup as well. So kind of neat in terms of our community and the great things that are happening. And to your point about WeWork, I love the fact that you did make that investment even before the building was built, because you recognize in a community that there was going to be a lot more happening. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with your wife's suggestion of maybe being connected directly to a realty company. But the great thing about being involved in College Park and in the WeWork community is there are so many different people and so many small businesses, entrepreneurs, and individuals who come in every day, and the community is so vibrant and robust that you never know who you're going to bump into.
Right.
And you never know the opportunities that are going to come from that, whether they're that day or a week or a year later. It just happens that when the moment arrives, you were there and they think of you. So I think that's kind of the great thing that I believe having companies like yours invested in our community, who, even though you're George Mason alum, you still realize it's not the University of Maryland, it's College Park, it's Prince George's County, it's the state of Maryland, it's a DMV, but it's also the people, right?
Right. And even in my industry, what I read before I started, over $1 billion invested in the district.
Yep.
There were going to be something like 2,500 new housing units over a certain period of time that would be added to this community.
Right.
And so that's pretty amazing, to see that opportunity has come about. And just since the almost 2 years that I've been there, I've seen a ton of change.
Yeah.
And development happen in a good way, actually. And it seems like a really good community. And so, the housing piece was definitely something that I thought of. And Sammy, I would have never met you if it weren't for, that opportunity. I remember you took me in your car and you rode me around and you showed me the whole district and gave me an idea of what was going on around. And so, I needed to have you on today because everyone needs to know Sammy. Sammy, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Popat?
So I tell people, especially familiar in Maryland, Edgar Allan Poe, Popat. So Sammy Popat. Yeah,
Popat.
Nice and simple. But I want to thank you for that plug right there. And I do want to add and kind of clarify as well. The area that we're part of, the Discovery District, is also part of a broader vision called Greater College Park. And so, yes, we've had $1 billion invested in us from private corporations, commercial real estate, different investors. And then also, I should add $1 billion into the university community itself, so the campus. And both are growing. And my colleague, Ken Ullman, he recently came across this statistic that we have 5 cranes going on right now in the Greater College Park community, which might be the most amount of cranes anywhere in the state. So the construction through the pandemic continues strong, and our community continues to grow. Actually, we're about a couple of weeks away from opening a new commercial property of 100,000 square feet in the Discovery District. It's 4600 River Road, and it's with our partners at COPT. So we're excited. We actually have 3 companies coming in, including 1 university entity. So lots of growth, lots of development. We're just on the cusp. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, people will know College Park and the Discovery District, just like you've got to know it. And I'm always happy to give people tours. I think there's nothing more than having that personal touch and showing people what's happening and giving them that vision. Because when other people buy into the vision and are invested in it, they're going to be as excited as I am. But I also think, to your point, they're going to know what's happening and they're going to feel like they're part of something special.
Right. That's awesome. So, Sammy, how can folks connect with you? Because, part of this, the reason we're meeting today is to talk about connecting and networking. There's definitely a ton of value in that. And so that's your job. You have the coolest gig in the world, I think.
Thank you.
To have a business card with the title connector on it. How can we connect with you? Like, how should we go about contacting you?
So obviously you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to if you send me a request, and I do ask that if people do send me a request, just because I get a lot of people I don't necessarily know, just let me know, hey, heard you on Shawn's show, would love to connect. That's easy. You can find me under Sammy Popat. I'll give you my email address. So I'm happy to respond to emails, spopat@umd.edu. Feel free to connect with me there and just say, hey, I'd love to learn more about the Discovery District. I do need to plug my website for our university, which is the Innovation Gateway. It's a great resource if you are interested in learning about what's happening. If you're looking for a resource around innovation, entrepreneurship, economic development, go to innovate.umd.edu. And you'll definitely learn more about what's happening at the institution, some of the Discovery District companies. We also have a newsletter that we send out through MailChimp. If you're interested in subscribing, just contact me. We'll get you added to that as well. So lots of tools, lots of ways to connect. I'm also on Twitter at UMD Research Park and startup_UMD. So you can tweet at me, find out what's happening. All about sharing what's going on, not just in the university and the Discovery District, but Greater College Park, Prince George's County, and the DMV. We are a growing and booming economy, and I'm hoping we'll see ourselves through this pandemic, and we'll hopefully bring a lot of good back. With each of us really working hard on figuring out what needs to be done for economic stimulus, for economic empowerment, and economic mobility.
Awesome. So I'm not going to let you go that easy, Sammy.
I knew you had something.
We'll save the icebreaker. It'll be make it the end. So Sammy, you get one person, dead or alive.
Okay.
And one question.
Ooh.
Who would that be, and what would you ask?
Oh, there's so many questions and so many people, right now, I don't know who you'd ask, but I'd like to know how the future unfolds, to be honest, in terms of when is this pandemic over? And I know that's not the question or the answer you were looking for, but I think.
No, I'm looking for however you answer it. It's serious. Yeah. Seriously, I love asking this question and hearing the answers, and most people that listen, they love it as well.
Yeah.
So no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, I'm okay with the uncertainty, but I'm also one for planning, and I want to be able to pace myself. And I think that a lot of us through this last 9-10 months, and whoever knows how long this is prolonged, but the pandemic, I'd love to ask someone, what's it look like on the other side, and how do we prepare for that, right? And I think it's got to do with me as an individual who likes to be prepared for what's coming, and I'd like to help make sure our community is ready for it, and so we can leverage all the great things, hopefully, that can come out of this, including maybe XR for good, economic mobility and economic development, and maybe some new policies and stimulus to get all of us back on our feet again.
That was great. That was insightful. I haven't heard that one yet.
Maybe there's an oracle out there, or sage, or maybe it's just our collective, creative energy. Who knows?
As soon as you find out, please text me. Not call or anything, but just if I see you with pictures in the WeWork or in and around College Park, I'll know that it's all good.
Yeah, well, I do wish everybody happy and healthy holiday season. We got a lot of things going on right now, but hopefully people stay healthy, stay safe, be well.
Thank you, Sammy. And I'll close, and I'll ask you just to hang on for a quick second. But everyone, thank you for participating again this week. 33 weeks, 33 or 34. This is, Sammy. So we're very proud of that. It's just like I mentioned to you before we started, just a great opportunity to introduce my network to my network, because I really feel like it would be such a shame if we didn't, if we built these relationships and we didn't share them with others. And so there's tremendous amount of value, everyone, in knowing Sammy. It really is. And so I wanted to make sure that I share that. Again, everybody knows that it's all about the relationship piece with us. It's how we got connected to as well, Sammy. DNA, why you do what you do, who you let down. And so we've already talked and touched on that too as well, with the character piece. And having a plan. You just laid out a bit of a plan for us. Like, even when you were speaking about the artificial intelligence, like just some of the things that you were talking about, I really didn't quite understand how that fit in. But that's really a good plan, to have some empathy and understanding about, what others may be going through, and putting yourself in other people's shoes. And so I thought that was that was valuable information. So everyone, if there's anything that I can ever do to help anyone, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here to help. Stay as safe and as healthy as possible. Like Sammy said, enjoy the holidays. So I have one more of these before the holiday, but I look forward to seeing everybody again next week. So again, thank you for your time, Sammy.
Thank you.
Thank you.